Hi, I'm Ryan Szimanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a stowaway.
Hi, I'm Drachinifel. They found me lurking around a 16-inch gun and couldn't make me go away.
So today we've gotten some really devastating news about one of our sister museum ships up in Buffalo, the USS Sullivans. And first of all of the commentary expressed in this video is purely our own stuff. It's got no association with any institutions we're associated with. And second off, this has all happened. What we're talking about has all happened in the last 24 hours. So we don't have all the information yet. Some of what we're talking about is pure speculation. We're going to try and stay away from that and talk about what we do know. But undoubtedly, more information will come out in the next couple of days, and we'll have a more complete picture of what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess the first question is, what has happened to the Sullivans for those people who are interested in naval history and watching this, but have somehow missed it?
Yeah, so Sullivans is a World War II era Fletcher-class destroyer. Her hull is at a maximum something like 3/8 of an inch thick. So not a particularly thick-skinned boat. She's a destroyer. She's not supposed to have that. But she has been a museum ship now for decades in the care of the Buffalo and Erie Military Park. And recently she's been having a lot of issues with her hull, as have a number of other museum ships of this vintage. Most museum ships are World War II era, as you know. And she has some known leaking issues. Last night when we went to bed, she had gone from the normal amount of water she was taking on to about a 5-degree list, but that was under control. By the time I got into work this morning, that list had increased. We believe it has to do with a power loss issue, so they were not able to pump out water anymore, and the ship started to roll over, and she's probably sitting on the bottom now.
Yeah, from the photos we've seen, she's either on the bottom or potentially her superstructure's resting on the quayside, and that may be holding her up for the moment, but who knows? We don't know, obviously, what if any, watertight subdivision was going on inside the ship at the time, where the water may have reached. If there's any bulkheads that are holding it back, things will develop in the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not going to post any pictures of her. We don't have the copyright to any of these, but there are links to several news stories of her where you can see video of the ship and other stuff down in the description below. Typically, museum ships have as much open as possible, not just to have an open tour route, but also the ventilation that you get is much better for the long-term preservation of the ship, assuming that the ship is watertight.
Yes. So what are they currently doing about it, other than kind of watching it slowly slip beneath the water? So
our peers in Buffalo, we know them very well. We hang out with them every year at the annual conference. They are professional museum ship restoration people. They know what they're doing. They are pumping the water out currently. We know that much from videos. We can see they are pumping a ton of water, but it also seems like they aren't sure, or the news at least reporting this is not sure where the leak is specifically. So they may not have patched the leak yet, and obviously the pumps have not caught up with the water. Yeah, so undoubtedly the first step was to call their underwater divers, and all of us museum ships have one on speed dial for just this occasion.
Yeah, I suppose that's going to be critical to work out, is this a pre-existing leak and just a power failure? Did the power fail because an existing leak got a lot bigger, overwhelmed the pumps, and then as the ship went over, that shorted the power out? How far has it spread? Because obviously, if you start pumping water in and out of the ship, it's going to exert stresses on the ship. So if there's a large section of plating that's actually, basically rust, paint and dreams at this point, then potentially even an attempt at salvage could make things worse, because that could make even more of that plate fail, which is obviously why they're sending the divers in first to figure out what needs to be done in terms of patching before they try and get it out. Who actually controls this ship? I know you mentioned it's in the care of, but is it actually owned by the US Navy? Do they have any obligation to it? Is it effectively just a privately owned vessel?
Good question. Many museum ships, including New Jersey and the Sullivans in this instance, are not owned by the U.S. Navy. They don't get 1 cent of federal money. They are an independent, non-profit organization, and in the case of the Buffalo and Erie Military Park, they are caring for multiple macro artifacts. They've got the cruiser Little Rock, the destroyer Sullivans, and the submarine Croaker. So they're trying to maintain all of these World War II era vessels non-profit. So basically with your ticket sales and donations when you go and visit the ship.
And of course, the submarine's got a pressure hull that's designed to take a heck of a lot more than just sitting around, and the cruiser is a cruiser, so it's built with thicker steel. So if any of them was going to go first, it was unfortunately going to be the Sullivans.
Yeah, she's very much a weather vane for the rest of the fleet. If she's getting these issues, then it's only a matter of years until the bigger ones start to get it too.
Which I suppose raises the question, did the Sullivans have ongoing maintenance issues? Because obviously they had pumps on board, so there was a certain amount of water ingress, but there's a certain amount of water ingress on any ship, even active service duty ships.
Yes, and they were aware of an issue, and they raised about $500,000 very recently to do all these underwater repairs and go into dry dock. They have 2 problems there, though. If I need a dry dock today, it could be 6 months or a year before I get into dry dock. As many of you guys know, Texas has been trying to get into dry dock for years now, and they've got the money to do it, but they're waiting for the right dry dock to open up, which hopefully they've been talking about this summer. But that's already about a year behind what initial hopes were, and the Sullivans is no different. They couldn't get into a dry dock overnight, and 2, because they're so far north, you can't exactly do the work in situ when there's ice around the hull.
No, I mean, it's, you've got wetsuit dives, dry suit dives, heated suit dives, and to be honest, any of those are going to have limited time underwater, and obviously it gets progressively more expensive, and there's fewer and fewer people qualified the more and more complex the dive gets. Having said that, as someone who's let my own underwater dry suit diving training lapse, it takes a while and it takes a fair bit of funding, and a lot of these people are doing it privately as volunteers. As you say, each ship might have someone on dial who can dive, but having someone on dial who can wetsuit dive just to check out, is this okay, is fine, and decent wetsuit and good health even in that area, as long as there's not ice on the water, you can probably do a quick spot check. But if you're going to do anything detailed or possibly repairs, that's a whole other level of just having the qualifications for the appropriate type of dive suit, let alone also having the qualifications to go poking around the side of a ship.
Yeah, I know when I worked on Taney before coming here, she's a Coast Guard cutter with roughly equivalent age and thickness of hull, and we didn't want to do anything aggressive with scraping the underwater hull or anything like that in situ, because if you scrape away that piece of rust that is the outside coating, well, now you've made a hole.
So, are there any other ships in danger of this happening at the moment?
Unfortunately, the Sullivans is not the first ship, and she will most certainly not be the last ship. We have had a couple of these ships here in the last couple of years. The submarine Clamagore, just a couple of months ago, we got news reports that she started leaking down in Patriots Point, South Carolina, and she is closed, and they're looking for a final disposal method for that vessel. And of course, the state of New Jersey has had 3 museum ships, and only one of them is still afloat. The lightship Barnegat and the submarine Ling both sank while they were museum ships. And groups have worked on recovering parts from them or refloating and repairing them, but neither one has reopened.
Yeah, I suppose this is one of the things you have to bear in mind, because ultimately there will be a lot of people speculating, should this ship have been permanently dry docked? What's the best way to exhibit a museum ship? And there is no perfect solution. A ship is designed to be in the water. There's a reason why when ships are launched, they're generally launched as effectively hull only. The armours, if there is going to be armour, is not attached. The main battery's not there. Big chunks of machinery sometimes aren't there. Superstructure may not be there. And it's simply because if you there's nothing stopping you building all of that on a slipway. But one, it's probably going to deform the hull on the slipway, and it also makes it a bit more difficult to launch because of stability. But the same thing applies when you take a ship out of the water. Now you've got all of that stuff in there. You've got to try and balance it all, and if you get it wrong and the ship rolls over, that's it. It pretty much, the amount of structural damage will be too much. Two, you've got to find somewhere with a spare dry dock that no one needs anymore. And three, even if you do manage all that support, especially on a relatively thin-hulled vessel like a destroyer, even looking at a much older ship like HMS Victory, that's been in dry dock for about 100 years, but when they did a laser scan of it, they found that the ship was literally just flowing around the supports. Granted, it's wood, it's going to do that a bit more than a steel ship would, but they've had to completely redo the support structure for that recently. So, there's a lot of cost, a lot of effort, and a lot of issues involved with having a ship in a long-term dry dock. And to be fair, the issues with Victory are known because she's been there for 100 years. There aren't any iron or steel-hulled ships on display that have been in dry dock for hundreds of years. Probably the closest would be something like maybe SS Great Britain. A, she's an iron-hulled Victorian ship, not a warship that's fewer point loads, and B, she's only been in dry dock for a few decades. So no one really knows what the long-term implications of putting a steel ship in dry dock are, apart from the expense and the other technical issues. And the ship is best suited support-wise for being in the water. The problem is the water wants to get in. And depending on where you're sitting, whether you're brackish water, salt water, fresh water, they all have their different issues, and eventually it will, if you don't keep up with things. And it's a race against time because, as I'm sure Ryan, supervising an actual museum ship will tell you, there's not unlimited money. So especially you think about at the moment, not only we're coming out of winter, when a lot of ships close, and even the ones that don't tend to get too many visitors, so less income coming in at that point, but we're also coming off of a 2-year pandemic when no one was allowed on board. So some ships have fortunately had the reserves and taken the opportunity to do a lot of maintenance and care and attention in the interim, but the ships that maybe didn't have those kind of reserves in the first place and relied on visitor income, they've had to sit there with their ships gradually deteriorating and not really being able to do all that much. And with these thin hulls, it doesn't take much. It could be fine one day, and then the next day it's like, oh, well, this is a problem.
Yeah, that's a great point about coming off of the pandemic. We're the Battleship New Jersey. We've got a ton of name recognition that maybe a smaller ship like the Sullivans does not. And we still had to defer a ton of maintenance over the last 2 years because there just was no income coming in, like you said. And we did receive state funding and federal funding to make up for some of that. And there's still stuff that dropped through for us. So I cannot imagine a multi-ship organization that doesn't have ships with the name recognition of a battleship in her home state and has significantly thinner skin.
Yeah, and I suppose the big question at this point in everyone's mind, I'm sure, is there anything we can do to help? I mean, I'm sure, given that the problem at the moment is they need to pump a lot of water out of a hull when it's coming in places it's not wanted, I'm fairly sure the guys on Battleship Texas have a lot of experience dealing with this issue. They're probably on the phone to them right now. But what else is there that the rest of us can do?
Yeah, so there is a link in the description below to support the Buffalo and Erie Military Park and the USS Sullivans. You can come back from something like this, but it is not easy and it is not cheap. They have the staff there with the expertise to do it, and in the larger museum ship community, like you mentioned, the guys on Texas know how to do this. There are lots of people who have the expertise to help, and we'll be reaching out to the staff of the Sullivans over the next several days. So the people and the expertise are here. The willpower is here. We need the support to be able to help preserve this ship. We need the money to help get her going. So I'm going to donate $1,000 to their page down here. Anything you guys can give them would be a huge help. We've also got local museum ships out there. These are all World War II era ships by and large. They're all going in the same direction. So if you can't help the Sullivans, maybe get out and volunteer on your local museum ship, or support them.
And bear in mind, money helps, especially if you're remote. Like, obviously, apart from at the moment, I will be generally. But if you happen to be local, especially with the Sullivans, and you have relevant skills, skills can often be as helpful or more helpful than just cold hard cash. Because apart from anything else, that ship's going to have been all wired up. There's been power failure of some sort. There's going to be an awful lot of electrical cabling that needs to be dried out and recertified. So if you have the relevant qualifications in that or any other field, I'm sure if you get in contact with them and you're happy to volunteer those services, not only will that help them, but that will also save money that can then be put towards other things, like, new hull plating.
Thank you guys for watching. We've got a video in the description below that we did a few years ago, Top 10 Most Threatened Museum Ships. The Sullivans was number 8 on that list. Go ahead and check that out and see what other ships are there. And we also put a link to Drac's channel in case, for some reason, you're watching me and you've never heard of this guy before. And of course, that channel to donate to USS The Sullivans, excuse me. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. Today, you should consider supporting Buffalo. Thanks for watching.